She gave me an old cot next to the furnace, while she slept under chandeliers. The smell hit me first. Mold mixed with something else I didn't want to think about. Sarah opened the basement door like she was showing me a palace suite. "It's temporary, Mom," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Just until we figure things out. 3 months since Richard died. 3 months since I lost the house to medical bills I thought insurance would cover. My daughter was my only option and she knew it. The basement had concrete walls that sweated in summer and a single bulb that flickered when the washing machine ran. She'd thrown down a thin rug that probably came from a garage sale. The cot looked like it belonged in a prison. "There's a bathroom down here," she said, pointing to a door that barely hung on its hinges. "And you can use the sink for whatever." I set my suitcase down. Everything I owned fit in 2 bags now. "Thank you, sweetheart." She almost smiled. Of course. Family takes care of family, right? The first week I thought she was just adjusting. We all were. She'd bring me meals on paper plates, tell me about her day at the marketing firm, ask how I was feeling. Normal daughter stuff. Then the rules started. "Mom, could you not use the kitchen when I have friends over? It's just, you know how it is. The upstairs bathroom is having issues. Better stick to the basement one. I need the living room for work calls. Maybe stay downstairs during business hours." Business hours stretched. Friends came over more often. The basement door stayed closed. I started noticing things. Scratching sounds at night. Droppings in the corners. The smell getting worse. "Sarah, I think we have mice," I told her one evening. She laughed. "Mice? Mom, that's ridiculous. This is a nice neighborhood." But nice neighborhoods don't make rodents disappear. I found chew marks on my blanket. Tiny footprints in the dust. I mentioned it again. "You're being paranoid," she said. "Maybe it's just the house settling. Houses don't leave droppings." I bought traps with my Social Security money. Caught 3 rats the first night. Big ones. Sarah found the traps when she came down to get her Christmas decorations. "What the hell is this?" "Rats, honey. I tried to tell you." She stared at the traps like I'd betrayed her. "You can't just set traps without asking. This is my house." "I'm sorry. I thought." "Don't think. Ask." He took the traps. The rats came back. I started sleeping with a towel under my door. Rats are smart. They learn your schedule. They wait until you're vulnerable. The basement got colder. Sarah said the furnace was old, that heating the whole house was expensive. I bought extra blankets. She saw the receipt. "Mom, you can't just spend money like that. We need to budget." Like my Social Security was somehow hers too. I started eating upstairs less. Sarah never invited me anymore. She'd order takeout and eat in her room. I'd heat canned soup on a hot plate I'd hidden behind the water heater. One night I heard her on the phone upstairs. Her voice carried through the thin floor. "No, it's actually perfect," she was saying. "Having her here makes me look responsible. Like I'm sacrificing for family." I pressed my ear to the ceiling. "You should see the engagement on my post. Everyone's commenting about how sweet it is that I'm taking care of my elderly mother. It's better than any marketing campaign." Someone responded. Sarah laughed. "I only keep them around for pity points on Instagram. You know how it is. Family trauma sells." The words hit me like cold water. I sat on my cot staring at the ceiling, listening to my daughter laugh about using my grief for social media likes. The scratching started again. Louder this time. I could hear them in the walls, moving like they owned the place. Maybe they did. The next morning, Sarah came down with coffee and toast. She was smiling. "How'd you sleep, Mom?" I looked at her face. Same green eyes as when she was little. Same dimples when she smiled. But something else lived behind those eyes now. "Fine," I said. "Good. I was thinking we should set some boundaries. You know, for both our sakes." She handed me a piece of paper. Typed. Numbered. Rules for living in her house. No kitchen access after 6 p.m. No using the front door. No guests without permission. No noise after 9 p.m. No complaints about living conditions. I read it twice. Sarah, this is necessary, she said. I love you, Mom, but we need structure. That night, I tried to go upstairs for a glass of water. The door was locked. I jiggled the handle. Knocked softly. Sarah. Nothing. I knocked harder. The door's locked, honey. Her voice came from the other side, muffled but clear. I know. Sleep well, Mom. The lock clicked again. Deadbolt. I stood there in the dark, listening to my daughter's footsteps fade away upstairs. The rats started moving in the walls again. Scratching. Planning. I was trapped in a basement with rodents while my daughter slept in silk sheets, posting about her sacrifice on social media. The cot creaked when I sat down. The concrete wall seemed to close in. And somewhere in the dark, something scurried across my feet. The lock stayed. 3 days I spent knocking on that door. 3 days of I'm busy, Mom, and just give me some space. The hot plate became my lifeline. Canned beans and instant coffee. The rats watched me eat. I started remembering things. Maybe it was the isolation. Maybe it was hunger making my mind wander. But I kept thinking about Sarah at 7 years old, pigtails bouncing as she ran to me after school. Mommy, I made you this. A drawing. Stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. That's you and me, she'd said. We're best friends forever. I'd hung it on the refrigerator. Kept it there until she turned 16 and called it embarrassing kid stuff. Now I'm the embarrassing stuff. The basement got worse. Water started seeping through the foundation. My cough wouldn't go away. I'd wake up wheezing, tasting copper. The rats had multiplied. I could hear whole families of them in the walls now. Sarah brought me meals twice a day. Paper plates slid through a gap under the door like I was some kind of animal. She never came down anymore. I tried talking through the door. Sarah, I need to see a doctor. This cough. You're fine, Mom. It's just dust. The water heater is leaking. There's mold everywhere. I'll look into it. He never did. I started thinking about the early days. When Sarah was born, Richard and I were broke. Living in a studio apartment above a laundromat. I was working double shifts at the diner, he was doing construction. But we had plans. One day, I'd tell baby Sarah while she slept on my chest, Mommy's going to build something big. Something that'll take care of us forever. The tech company started in our garage. Data flow solutions. I saw the internet coming before most people did. Richard thought I was crazy investing our savings in computer equipment. But I knew. You're gambling with our daughter's future, he'd said. I'm securing it. I was right. By the time Sarah turned 10, we'd moved to the big house. The one with chandeliers. Swimming pool. 3-car garage. Sarah never wanted for anything. Private school. Dance lessons. Summer camps in Europe. College with no debt. I handed her the world on a silver platter. And she locked me in a basement. My cough got worse. Blood started showing up in my spit. I knocked on the door harder. Sarah, I'm sick. Really sick. You're being dramatic. I need fresh air. Just let me sit upstairs for an hour. You're safer down there. Safer. Like I was some kind of danger to her perfect life upstairs. I found an old cardboard box behind the water heater. My things from when I moved in. Photo albums Sarah said were too cluttered for upstairs. My jewelry box. Some papers. I looked through the photos. Sarah's graduation from high school. College. Her first job. In every picture she was smiling. Happy. What happened to that girl? The jewelry box played the same tune it had for 30 years. A tiny ballerina spinning in circles, trapped in her little world. I knew how she felt. Inside, underneath the costume jewelry Sarah thought was worthless, I found my emergency phone. The one I'd hidden from the debt collectors. Battery dead. But it meant something. It meant I wasn't completely powerless. I started exercising. Push-ups against the wall. Walking laps around the basement. If Sarah wanted to keep me down here, I'd get strong enough to break out. My cough improved with the movement. My mind got clearer. I started remembering more than just the good times with Sarah. I remembered the warning signs. High school. Sarah coming home with expensive clothes I didn't recognize. Where did you get that purse? A friend gave it to me. College. Credit cards in my name that I didn't apply for. Sarah, did you use my information for? It was an emergency, Mom. I'll pay it back. He never did. After college. The job at the marketing firm that barely paid enough to cover her apartment. But somehow she was driving a BMW. Sarah, how are you affording? I'm good with money, Mom. Unlike some people. The some people was me. The woman who built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. I started wondering what else I'd missed. What else she'd taken while I was trusting her. On the 7th day of being locked down here, something slid under the door. Not a meal. An envelope. Plain white. No return address. My name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside, a single piece of paper. They forgot who you are. That was it. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. But someone knew I was down here. Someone knew this wasn't right. I held the note up to the flickering light bulb. The paper was expensive. Heavy stock. The kind of paper that came from law offices or banks. They forgot who you are. I looked around the basement. At the moldy walls. The rat droppings. The cot that smelled like desperation. They forgot who I was. But I was starting to remember. I went back to my box. Dug deeper through the papers Sarah had dismissed as old junk. Birth certificates. Marriage license. Insurance papers. And then I found it. A folder I'd forgotten about. Legal documents from when I'd restructured the company. After Richard died. When grief made me sign papers without reading them carefully. Sarah had been there. Just sign here, Mom. I'll handle the details. I'd trusted her. She was my daughter. She was taking care of me. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The papers inside made my blood run cold. Power of attorney. Asset transfers. Beneficiary changes. Sarah hadn't just inherited my money when I died. She'd taken it while I was still alive. Every signature was mine. But I didn't remember signing half of these documents. My company. My investments. My retirement accounts. Everything had been quietly transferred to Sarah Elizabeth Chin. My daughter. The woman who was keeping me locked in a basement while she spent my money upstairs. The note made sense now. They forgot who you are. They forgot I was the woman who built Data Flow Solutions. The woman who sold it for $47 million. The woman whose name was still on bank accounts and investment portfolios worth more than Sarah could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I was remembering now. And someone else remembered too. I folded the documents carefully and slid them back into the folder. Then I reached deeper into the box, feeling around the bottom corners. My fingers found it. Small. Metal. Pulled. A key. Not just any key. The key to a safety deposit box at First National Bank. The box Sarah didn't know about. The one I'd opened the week before Richard's funeral. The box where I'd hidden copies of everything important. Including the real will. The one I'd written before grief made me stupid. I closed my eyes and smiled for the first time in weeks. Sarah thought she was so clever. Thought she'd taken everything. But she'd forgotten the most important rule I'd taught her when she was little. Always have a backup plan. The key fit in my palm like destiny. I charged the hidden phone using the outlet behind the furnace. Took 2 days to get enough power for one call. But I only needed one. Margaret Chen's office. I almost cried hearing my lawyer's secretary's voice. Professional. Familiar. From the world where I still mattered. This is Margaret Chen. Long silence. Then a gasp. Mrs. Chen? But that's impossible. We received notification months ago that I was what, Janet? Dead, Mrs. Chen. We received a death certificate. Your daughter handled all the arrangements. She said you passed quietly at home. The words hit me like ice water. Dead. Sarah had declared me dead. Janet, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm very much alive. And I need to see you immediately. Mrs. Chin, I don't understand. The death certificate looked official. There was even an obituary in the paper. Your daughter seemed devastated. An obituary. Sarah had written my obituary while I was rotting in her basement. Janet, meet me at First National Bank in 1 hour. Safety deposit box 247. And Janet? Don't tell anyone about this call. Anyone. The walk to the bank felt like walking through my own ghost story. I wondered if Sarah had held a funeral. If she'd cried crocodile tears while people offered condolences for the mother she'd buried alive. Janet was waiting by the safety deposit boxes, staring at me like I was a hallucination. Mrs. Chin, I need to see some identification. This is unprecedented. I showed her my driver's license, my social security card, everything that proved I was still breathing. My God, she whispered. What has she done? We opened box 247 together. Inside were copies of everything, including documents I didn't remember putting there. Janet, I need you to tell me exactly what happened after I supposedly died. She pulled out a thick folder from her briefcase. Your daughter brought us a death certificate from Mercy General Hospital. Said you'd been ill for months. That you died peacefully in your sleep. What date? March 15th. 3 days after you moved in with her. 3 days. Sarah had legally killed me 3 days after I moved into her house. She immediately filed as executor of your estate. Said you'd made her power of attorney before your death. Everything seemed legitimate. What everything? Janet's face went pale. She liquidated your investment accounts, transferred the house deed, closed your business accounts. Mrs. Chin, she's been operating as a dead woman's heir for months. I sat down hard. The scope of it was breathtaking. Sarah hadn't just stolen from me. She'd erased me from existence while keeping me alive as her basement pet. There's more, Janet said quietly. She's been collecting your Social Security benefits, your pension, even filed a life insurance claim. Life insurance? $2 million. From the policy you took out when you started the company. Sarah had cashed in on my death while feeding me scraps on paper plates. Janet, what happens when a dead person shows up alive? Fraud. Federal fraud. Identity theft. Insurance fraud. The penalties are... She swallowed hard. Mrs. Chin, your daughter is looking at decades in prison. Good. We spent the next hour documenting everything. Every fraudulent transaction. Every forged signature. Every lie Sarah had told while I was supposedly 6 feet under. What do you want me to do? Janet asked. Nothing yet. I want to see how deep this goes first. I took the bus home. Walked in through the front door like Lazarus returning from the dead. Which, legally on paper, I was. Sarah was in the kitchen on her phone as usual. She looked up and dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the tile floor. Mom? How did you? Where were you? Taking a walk. Through the land of the living. You can't just leave. What if something happened? What if someone saw you? Someone seeing me. That was Sarah's real fear. Dead people don't take walks in broad daylight. I ran into Mrs. Patterson from down the street. She seemed surprised to see me. Sarah's face went white. What did you tell her? That I was feeling much better. She said the strangest thing, though. She said she thought I'd died. Said she remembered reading my obituary. Sarah's hands started shaking. She's confused. Old people get confused. Do they? I've been feeling very clear-headed lately. Mom, you need to get back downstairs. You're not well. You're having episodes. Am I dead, Sarah? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Am I dead? Of course not. You're standing right here. But according to the state of California, I died on March 15th. Mercy General Hospital has a death certificate with my name on it. Sarah's face crumpled. Mom, I can explain. Can you? I'd love to hear how you explain killing your own mother. The next 3 days were fascinating. Sarah couldn't lock me up anymore without risking neighbors seeing a dead woman being held captive. So I stayed upstairs, used the kitchen, watched TV, acted like a living human being. Sarah was falling apart. She kept getting phone calls she wouldn't answer. Mail she'd hide from me. She barely slept. On the 4th day the call came that changed everything. I was in the living room when Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and went pale. I have to take this, she said, walking to the kitchen. But I could hear every word. Ms. Chin? This is Detective Morrison with the Social Security Administration's Fraud Division. We need to speak with you immediately. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. About what? We have a situation regarding your mother, Margaret Chin. You filed for survivor benefits after her death in March, correct? Yes, but... Ma'am, we have a problem. Margaret Chin was spotted yesterday at First National Bank. She was very much alive and accessing her safety deposit box. Silence. Ms. Chin? Are you there? There must be some mistake. My mother she's very ill. She has dementia. She gets confused. Ma'am, our records show you declared her deceased and collected over $40,000 in fraudulent survivor benefits. We also have reports from the bank, the insurance company, and the IRS. This is a federal crime. I can explain. You can explain it to the federal prosecutor. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. Sarah walked back into the living room like she was walking to her execution. She looked at me sitting on the couch, very much alive, watching the news. Mom, we need to talk. Do we? That call, there's been a misunderstanding. About your legal status. My legal status? The paperwork when you moved in. I may have misrepresented some things. You declared me dead. It wasn't a question. Sarah's face told me everything. I was trying to protect you. After Dad died, you were so depressed. You kept talking about wanting to die. I thought if you were legally dead, you'd be safe from creditors. From people trying to take advantage of you. So you took advantage of me instead. I was managing your affairs. You were cashing my death benefits while keeping me alive in your basement. Sarah started crying. I made mistakes. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. You could have tried not murdering me. You're not murdered. You're right here. Try explaining that to the federal prosecutor. Sarah's phone rang again. This time she looked at it like it was a bomb. Answer it, I said. She did, putting it on speaker with shaking hands. Miss Chin, this is Agent Williams with the FBI. We're investigating reports of identity theft, insurance fraud, and financial crimes involving a deceased person named Margaret Chin. Sarah looked at me with pure terror in her eyes. We understand Margaret Chin has been spotted alive despite being legally deceased. We need to speak with both you and your mother immediately. My mother she's not well. She can't. Ma'am, if your mother is alive, then someone has committed multiple federal crimes. If she's dead, then someone is impersonating her. Either way, we need answers. Can we do this tomorrow? I need time too. Miss Chin, you need to understand the severity of this situation. We're talking about fraud charges that carry a maximum sentence of 30 years in federal prison. Sarah dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor, the agent's voice still talking about search warrants and arrests. I stood up and walked over to my daughter. She was hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, I said gently, I think there's something you need to understand. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. I've been dead for months. Legally, officially dead. Which means everything you've done since March 15th has been a federal crime. Mom, please. The house you're living in, owned by a dead woman. The money you've been spending, stolen from a dead woman. The benefits you've been collecting, Fraudulent survivor payments. I can fix this. I can tell them it was a mistake. Sweetheart, I said, picking up the phone from the floor. The only mistake was thinking you could bury me while I was still breathing. I hung up on the FBI agent and looked at my daughter. My little girl who'd drawn pictures of us holding hands under a yellow sun. The agents will be here soon, I said. You might want to pack a bag. Sarah stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Or maybe like she was seeing a ghost. Which, legally speaking, she was. Where are you going? She asked as I walked toward the door. I turned back one last time. Somewhere the living are allowed to go. And I walked out into the sunlight, leaving my daughter alone with the consequences of murdering someone who refused to stay dead. 3 weeks later, I sat in the federal courthouse wearing a navy blue suit that actually fit me. Real clothes. Clean hair. Breathing free air. Sarah sat at the defendant's table in orange. She'd lost 20 pounds. Her hair hung limp and unwashed. Prison had not been kind to my daughter. The gallery was packed. News crews. Curious onlookers. Mrs. Patterson from down the street who kept staring at me like I might disappear again. The defendant will rise. Sarah stood on shaking legs. Her lawyer, a public defender who looked barely out of law school, tried to look confident. But federal fraud charges don't leave much room for confidence. Sarah Elizabeth Chin, you have been found guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government. I watched my daughter's face crumble. The jury had deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. Not even long enough for lunch. Before sentencing, the court will hear victim impact statements. That was my cue. I walked to the podium slowly. Every eye in the courtroom followed me. The woman who'd risen from the dead to testify against her own daughter. Your Honor, my name is Margaret Chin. According to the state of California, I died on March 15th of this year. A ripple of murmurs went through the gallery. But I didn't die. I was locked in a basement. Fed scraps. Forced to live with rats while my daughter collected death benefits and posted on social media about what a loving caretaker she was. I looked directly at Sarah. He was crying, but I felt nothing. I built a company from nothing. Worked 18-hour days so my daughter could have everything she wanted. Private schools. College. A future. I paused, letting that sink in. She repaid me by burying me alive. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Chin, can you tell the court about the conditions of your confinement? Moldy basement. 1 meal a day. No medical care when I developed pneumonia. And when I tried to leave, she locked the door. How long were you confined? 4 months. 4 months of being legally dead on paper while being physically imprisoned. Sarah's lawyer objected. Your Honor, the defendant was caring for an elderly parent with dementia. I don't have dementia, I said calmly. I have a master's degree in computer science and built a $47 million company. The only thing wrong with my mind was trusting my daughter. The judge nodded. Continue, Mrs. Chin. Your Honor, my daughter didn't just steal money. She stole my existence. She made me a ghost in my own life while she lived off my death. I pulled out a piece of paper. This is the obituary she wrote for me. Published in the Los Angeles Times while I was eating canned beans in her basement. I read it aloud. Margaret Chin passed peacefully at home surrounded by family. She will be remembered as a loving mother who gave everything for her daughter's future. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She was right about one thing. I did give everything for her future. And now she has no future at all. I folded the paper and looked at Sarah one last time. My daughter made me invisible. So I'm returning the favor. I sat down. The courtroom was silent except for Sarah's quiet sobbing. The judge called a recess. During the break, Sarah's lawyer approached me in the hallway. Mrs. Chin, my client would like to speak with you. No. She's your daughter. My daughter died the day she locked me in that basement. 20 minutes later we were back in session. Sarah Elizabeth Chin, the judge said, you have been convicted of defrauding the United States government of over $2 million while holding your own mother in deplorable conditions. Sarah stood swaying slightly. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to all affected parties. 15 years. Sarah would be 53 when she got out. Additionally, the judge continued, the court is ordering a full forensic audit of all transactions made in Margaret Chen's name since March 15. Any additional fraudulent activity will result in additional charges. The gavel came down like thunder. As they led Sarah away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. Mom, she mouthed. I turned away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. Mrs. Chin, how does it feel to see your daughter sentenced? Mrs. Chin, will you be pursuing civil damages? Mrs. Chin, what's next for you? I stopped at the microphones. The cameras focused on my face. My daughter asked me once why I built my company. I told her it was to secure her future. I paused, looking directly into the nearest camera. I was wrong. I built it to secure my own future. A future without people who would bury me alive for money. What will you do now? I'm going to live. Really live. For the first time in months. Will you ever forgive your daughter? I thought about that. About the little girl who drew pictures of us holding hands. About the woman who locked me in a basement while cashing death benefits. Forgiveness requires repentance. My daughter isn't sorry she hurt me. She's sorry she got caught. I walked away from the cameras toward the parking garage where Janet was waiting with my car. My car registered to a living person again. Where to, Mrs. Chin? She asked. Anywhere but here. As we drove away, I thought about the house. Sarah's house, technically, until the government seized it for restitution. I thought about the basement with its moldy walls and scratching rats. Someone else's problem now. I'd already bought a new place. A penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and no basements. The kind of place where light poured in from every direction. The kind of place where the living could flourish. 3 months later, I was having lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown when I saw her. A young woman at a corner table crying into her phone. I can't make rent this month, she was saying. I know. I'm trying my best, Mom. She looked tired. Defeated. The way I'd felt in that basement. I paid my check and walked over to her table. Excuse me, I said. I couldn't help but overhear. Are you looking for work? She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Yes, ma'am. Anything honest. I'm starting a new foundation. The Margaret Chin Foundation for Elder Protection. We help seniors who've been abused or abandoned by their families. Her face brightened slightly. That sounds amazing. We need people who understand what it's like to feel powerless. People who know what it means to be thrown away. I'd love to help. I handed her my card. Call me tomorrow. Ask for Margaret Chin. Margaret Chin? Wait, aren't you the woman who came back from the dead? Yes. That's me. He stared at me like I was a miracle. Which in a way I was. As I walked back to my car, I thought about Sarah. About whether she was thinking about me in her prison cell. Whether she understood what she'd lost. Probably not. Sarah never understood that love wasn't something you could steal. Trust wasn't something you could forge. Family wasn't something you could fake. I'd given her everything and she'd thrown it away for money she didn't even need. But that was her choice. And now she'd live with it. I drove home to my penthouse where light filled every room and no one could lock me away. Where I was building something new from the ashes of what my daughter had tried to destroy. She'd made me invisible. But invisible people see everything. And now everyone could see her exactly for what she was. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, other people were being locked away by the ones who claimed to love them. Being made invisible. Being erased. But not anymore. Not on my watch. Sarah had taught me something valuable in that basement. She taught me that the dead have nothing left to lose. And nothing left to fear. I raised my glass to the window, to the light, to the future I'd built from the grave my daughter had dug for me. "Thank you, sweetheart," I whispered, "for showing me who I really am. The woman who survived being buried alive. The woman who came back stronger. The woman who would make sure no one else disappeared the way I had." In the distance, a siren wailed. Someone else's emergency. Someone else's crisis. But I was safe now. Safe in the light, in the life I'd reclaimed, in the future I'd stolen back from my daughter's greed. I was finally, completely, beautifully alive. And Sarah Elizabeth Chin was exactly where she belonged. Invisible,